Growing up in high school, I always aimed for A's, and I got them, all except in my science classes. Every single year, it would be a battle to get all A's, and science class always held me back. Whether it be biology or chemistry, the B always showed up on my report card. I got discouraged. I wanted to be a doctor, but because I was doing bad, because I thought B's were bad, of course, I was always an A student. I discouraged myself from going that route because if I couldn't get an A in high school honors chemistry, there was no way I could pass in college. This had started my dislike of science, all because of the grade. In elementary, I remember science as studying amphibians and mammals and crustaceans, or learning how to grow plants and seeing how worms would affect the growth of the plants. The exploring and observing was all good and fun, and I loved that kind of science. But when it turned into receiving grades on chemical equations, I fell off the science boat. But then I got to college, and I was challenged once again to a science class, microbiology, specifically community health problems. And I still got a B, which furthered my dislike, because getting a B wasn't up to my standards. So you could imagine my excitement when I saw I had to take EDT 182, another science class, to meet requirements for a major. Stoked. When I got to my first class of EDT 182, I thought to myself, well, this isn't really science. Throughout the semester, my view on what science is and what science is not has changed. At first, in EDT 182, I was challenged because I am so focused on getting the grade that I need. But this class wasn't focused on the grade. I struggled with the focus not being on the grade, but I feel as if I explored my mind more than any other science class I had been a part of before. Throughout this class, I have learned some things about science that added to my knowledge. One thing I struggled with was the idea of absolute truth. It baffles my mind that science doesn't hold absolute truths, but explanations that can be disproven at any given time. The idea of absolute truth was shocking to me because I have never been skeptical of what my teachers were telling me. I took it as fact, and that was that. But science is always changing, therefore, what scientists now know might be different than what they have previously known or what they are going to find out in the future. I still struggle with the idea of absolute truth, because isn't stating that science isn't an absolute truth? I am someone who wants to know factual things, which is why I struggled so much and was challenged by the thinking in this class. I want to get the right answer, and I want there to only be one right answer. This thinking challenged me, but expanded my knowledge on the fact that in the real world outside of the school system, there isn't always one right answer. This is how children are educated now. With one right answer in school, it creates a very strict way of thinking with little to no room for creative scientific thinking. Because the thinking in schools is very strict and is purposely taught for the test, it is very easy for students to go through the motions by figuring out how to work the system that school is. By introducing thinking like a scientist to a classroom, children are taking their own learning by the reins, and their thinking takes them where they want to go. Teachers should guide students instead of providing them the answers for a specific due date. Scientific thinking allows students to question and explore things where there might not be an answer to it yet. With textbook thinking, there should be an answer to everything, but this thinking allows for possible explanations that could lead to more knowledge and more exploring. Thinking like a scientist allows students to think creatively and critically, as well as become real-life problem solvers with not just one possible solution, but as many as they can think of. When students get into the real world without a system that they are taught to complete, they will be faced with problems where the answers aren't given to them. Thinking like a scientist is relevant because it provides and prepares students for the real world. For me, it's very easy to relate the things in EDT 182 and to carry things on from this class to my future endeavors. A lot of the things I will carry with me doesn't necessarily relate to the content of EDT 182, like rocks and minerals and Earth's surface, but the style in which EDT 182 was taught, I will bring along. I will bring in the teaching style of EDT. I will provoke my students with questions that, for the most part, I really won't answer. I will guide them in the right direction in my classroom, not necessarily with answers, but with guiding questions relating to my first original question. I'll remember the assessments that we were called to complete and use these types of summative assessments to assess my students. Because of how these assessments are conducted, the assessor can see the process in which the student was thinking, and not just the grade or the right answer. The way in which EDT 182 was conducted will travel with me on my way to my own classroom. I might not have been good at science in the high school system technique sense, but I am a scientist in college, and I'm flourishing, because all I need to be a scientist isn't chemical properties and equations, but just a curiosity and creativity with a dash of critical thinking to become a scientist. I have a different sense of what science is, and I want my future students to have that too.